Supposed to be about local fan groups. My name is Chrissinger. I'm the current chair of Bubonicon, but I also am involved with the Albuquerque Science Fiction Society, which started Bubonicon way back in 1969.
That's here. I'm with the Baltimore Science Fiction Society, where I'm on the board, and I will also be chair of Balticon in 2021.
Hi, I'm Russ Miller. I'm with FinCon in Dallas, Texas. I've been running that. I'm one of the founders of it. We've been running that for 16, almost 17 years now. I've also helped with some NASFIX, and we actually ran a SMOFCon in Fort Worth a few years ago. So, and we came from a local science fiction club called ORAC, which started out as Blake 7 Club many, many years ago, back in the 80s. It kind of morphed into a general club until we said, hey, let's run a convention, yay.
Amy Shuman, Cleveland Concoction. Bunch of us in Cleveland decided we were tired of driving to go to conventions. So we started a con.
It's a trap.
It is.
That seems like something where you should just, who's got the largest house? Let's just meet there like twice a year.
I've got a
We'll watch a movie, we'll have some pizza. Okay, so this panel is supposed to be kind of about the fact that most cons started from a local science fiction club. Often there's overlap, sometimes there's not, but most of them started that way. And so the question that we're supposed to address is just how the local science fiction clubs still affect the convention. I guess whether the conventions really depend on them anymore or not, which some of that's going to be about your structure. And so I don't know where we want to start. I guess we could talk about our local clubs and about their involvement with your convention.
Sure. So BISFIS, the Baltimore Science Fiction Society, runs Balticon. And it's completely, we have monthly con meetings and business meetings, which are on the same night. So everybody basically gets to know everybody who's running both. And the chair is even an elected position. So we determine the chair 2 years ahead of time, and the full membership of the society chooses the chair. And so a lot of the staff is drawn from the club, and we also get staff from elsewhere as well.
So as I said, we had started out with a general interest club, ORAC, and we knew that we wanted to do something just because, as Amy said, there was nothing in North Texas, and it was either go down to Austin or Houston or up into Oklahoma to go to a convention, and we said we just need to do one. We want to run the kind of convention we'd like to go to. We very quickly realized that fans have opinions. I don't know if anybody's into that.
No way.
It is the case. So what we quickly realized is that even though the club put in the seed money and the supplied, we drew our staff from the club, we very quickly had to separate ourselves legally from the club and set up a corporation and say, no, we 3 people here are actually in charge. None of you get to tell us what to do. Because otherwise we would have had every single thing. Well, you've got to run your concert this way. You have to run folk this way. And it doesn't work with a committee of 100 people.
As Russ says, I think that the fan groups are really great resources, fabulous resources. Not only for staffing your con, but when you need fan tables, and even when you need guests, go to your local fan clubs and say, who would you like to see, and can you help raise money for him or her?
Yeah.
Would you like to sponsor this person in any way, shape, or form? There are fabulous resources for ideas, for things to present at your con, and then you have a guaranteed some audience. You're going to get people from that fan group that are going to attend your con this year.
Right. Here in Albuquerque, clear up until about 1982, the club's treasury, living in a zippered bank bag, was also the convention's budget, but they started separating out a bank account for the convention. And when we incorporated, as you were saying, you kind of have to separate yourself out at a certain point, because if you're going to incorporate, which protects you from getting sued as an individual, but also if you can get your 501c3, then of course you're tax exempt. And our club still exists living out of a zippered bank bag. It's a cash thing. We have about 36 to 40 people showing up a month. And so we basically have enough dues to pay for the place we have to rent to have the meeting. And so they've become separated. We do have an open meeting every year where we ask people, who would you like to see a year and a half from now? Because we're in August. We usually do that meeting in March, because as you've probably all encountered, a lot of authors and artists now, you have to invite like 16, 18 months out, or you're not going to get them.
I'm kind of running from the assumption that all of our cons are incorporated, that we're all 501c3s of one, really.
If you're small enough, you can get away without it, because if you make under a certain amount of money per year, you can get away with it. And that's another thing we wanted to get that away from.
Right.
You also need to use the minds. Sorry.
You have to
Yeah.
identify yourself.
That's right.
People online can't hear you.
Esther, how's
Right.
that knitting going?
Okay, I'm Kevin Hewitt. I help run Bubonicon, mainly in the art show. One of the other things, the reason you want to be incorporated is if you're not, your volunteers can sue the convention for wage theft because you're not paying them anything. And that is a significant issue that can essentially shut a convention down permanently.
Although that depends on jurisdiction, because Maryland operates differently about volunteers, even if it's not a 501c3, although we are.
Yeah, there's reasons for doing it, but I think we all started out as some kind of club or another. And then, I mean, when you've got 36 to 40 people showing up at your club meeting and your Concom's 35 people, you're obviously not getting all of your Concom just from that one club. In our case, like the person that's running gaming right now got drafted by the person who was doing gaming, who kind of wanted to retire. But he was staying on until I found someone. And so Matt, who's now doing our gaming, has no involvement with the science fiction club at all. But he does have a gaming background. He knows a lot of gamers in town. And so he's very successful in running his department because he had the resources and he had the contacts. But he's not part of the Albuquerque Science Fiction Society.
Hi, Elizabeth McCarty. Hey, Esther. I'm wondering what you guys do to find more people for your clubs, and how do you broaden your reach so it's not just the same 30 people all the time? Like, are you looking at ways of branching out and trying to attract new people to come in?
In our case, we run other events year-round. So we have things like book clubs and movie nights and such that help draw new people. And then we do some fairly active outreach to get a lot of younger people specifically through the convention. So people come in, and then we always mention the club, while we're there. We even have a banner up for that. And we sort of wait for them to come to us without being pushy about it.
Ours is similar. The club is on the convention's website. We have an events calendar. We include all the stuff we find out going around town up in Santa Fe. So anybody that's interested in science fiction, fantasy, or horror can pretty much go to that events calendar and find out everything going on. There's a book group here in town which is completely separate, just some people that want to talk about science fiction books once a month. The other thing we do for the club is for the convention itself, we do a lot of outreach into the local community. One of the things we do is this whole weekend, I've been running over to our independent cinema, the Guild Cinema, because we do door prizes whenever they do a genre film. Friday night they did Die Hard because it's a Christmas film. Last night was Black Sunday, the 74 original, and at 1 p.m. today it's Gremlin. So we have to run up there and give away door prizes. So we're constantly mentioning the convention, and there's flyers, and that you can go to our events calendar. There's a gentleman here at the con named Aaron that we found out moved to Albuquerque in January. So we try to do a lot of one-on-one, like, hey, did you know there's a club that meets once a month, and maybe you don't want to come every month, but if you go to the events calendar, you can see what the program is and just come anytime that you feel like it. But yeah, I mean, you can do some of that. I know some clubs have tried going to bookstores that will allow them to put bookmarks in books. I've seen that happen at a small scale. We don't quite do that anymore. It's a lot more online presence right now.
I'm finding, that's loud. I'm finding that I have a meetup.com is also a good place to go
Yeah.
to find people. And one of the differences between meetup.com and posting a Facebook group, for instance, is that the people that go on meetup.com really want to go someplace. They want to meet people face to face. And we've had pretty good response on that. Right now, my meetup group, it's actually not a fan group. It's a special interest group. But I did, since I'm allowed three groups under one account, I did put BASFA on there as well, the Bay Area Science Fiction Community. And that actually has brought in people to our meetings, our weekly meetings, and has been successful as far as that's concerned. So I do recommend it if you're forming something. It's meant mostly for local people, but
yeah, we've one of our members, Geneva, has posted the Science Fiction Club meeting a couple times on Meetup, and with very successful. She'll get like 3 to 5 people showing up, and some stick around, some don't. So everybody's got their flavor of tea they like, and sometimes you meet it, sometimes you don't.
This is what I do to look for people. For those of you online, I am holding up my Hogwarts jeans jacket and a unicorn hoodie, and I stuff my pockets with convention cards. If you approach me about anything I'm wearing, I'm going to give you the spiel, and I'm going to give you a card, and I'm going to encourage you to show up at our next meeting. So if you've got somebody who can talk to people, who is outgoing, who is approachable, use them.
Guerrilla convention marketing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I work at a bookstore, and anytime somebody comes up with several science fiction books, I'll say, "Did you know there's a convention here in town that George R. R. Martin goes to most years?" and sometimes that'll get people sometimes, or they'll go like, "Oh, I'll look into that. I'm kind of interested in this Becky Chambers book. I'd like to discuss it."
Mhm.
My name is Priscilla Olson. My question is, how do you retain people within your club? And how do you persuade people within your club to actually work on the convention, especially if they have an interest that they want to do that the convention doesn't want to have anything to do with?
Appreciate them and encourage them.
Even if they have no control over the decisions of the convention, are you going to get them to work?
Absolutely.
We get a lot of this we get a lot of
By
this
encouraging
volunteers.
By encouraging them and promoting them. And also, I mean, we have if anybody complains about anything, what you really need to do is, and then you say, that sounds fabulous. You need to handle that. You are clearly passionate about this idea. Please come and take care of that for us.
Right.
And part of one of my spiels is all about, if we have this, that, the other thing, if we don't have your geek, we want you to come out and tell us about your geek and why we should geek out about it with you.
Well, and a lot of
Get involved.
A lot of those people you'll get as gophers too. They don't want to come to every planning meeting all year long, but they're willing to pitch in 8 to 10 hours during a 3-day weekend. So you get a lot of them. And one of the things I try and do, and I know a lot of people in our club do, is when we have new people, we try to make sure that we say, "Hey, we see some new faces out there." And somebody, "Oh, I'm Steve." And so, well, everybody will go, "Hey, Steve." And we try to make people welcome. And that's really all you can do in terms of retaining, is make people feel like they're welcome and that you've noticed them. And if you're heading up your club, or even if it's at the club meeting most months, is try and learn people's names.
As far as ours goes, I think our club itself is fairly static. And again, the two organizations are fairly separate, even though there's a lot of cross-pollination, and we came from the club originally. They don't do a lot of outreach. I think probably they should to try to get some more members in, because any members that come into the club are going to hear about FinCon and say, "Ooh, I'd like to come and work on that." So we can bring them through, that area. one of the things that the convention has done in the past is through our members who belong to other organizations, like someone who belongs to a Star Trek group or somebody who's with the Brown Coats, we've encouraged and managed to get them to come in and do a mini con within the convention, which works great because they don't have the resources to put on their own convention, or maybe they just want to do like this quarterly gathering thing. They can come in, we'll give them 2 function rooms, they'll bring in members, they'll bring in hotel nights, and everybody's happy. And it actually works out pretty well as long as you have contractually, it doesn't have to be written, but maybe it ought to be, between the 2 organizations, exactly what we're going to provide and what you're going to do and the things you can and can't do at our con.
Concoction did not start from a fan club. It did not start from a club at all. It was just a bunch of friends. And that has its own problems because you get kind of insular with that. And when you get accused of, but you only keep your friends, you only employ your friends. Part of the problem there is that because we know how they do, we know how they work. You know, if you're it's going to be a little more difficult, but oddly, and I hate to say it, but resumes help. If you're new to a group and you're having trouble breaking in, a resume helps. It'll give them an idea of what you can do and how reliable you are.
Something that we do is keep an eye out. Something we do is keep an eye out for gophers who, have talent or have a strong interest in something, and over a year or 2 or 3, they become staff, and some of them even end up running departments.
Yeah, we've done a lot of that too. Plus, since we have people going to different groups, like I said, our gaming person's not in the club, but Nina in the audience came in through our registration. She's helped on our conventions, and she's been a wonderful asset. So I think your local club is important, but we were saying at the beginning, you're not getting all of your people just from your local club anymore. But yeah, we do the same thing. It's like, watch for who goes above and beyond, watch for who's always dependable and competent. And those are the people you're like, can we draft them?
Drafting, yes, drafting.
Hi, my name is Kristen Dorland. I'm from Santa Fe.
Hi, Kristen.
Do you ever address maybe failing leadership or not having people who want to lead your clubs, or how you're going to continue keeping your clubs or your conventions going?
We stress about that a lot, especially in the club. Our membership is aging, so that is an unsolved problem at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. Our club meets once a month. That's always going to be an issue because who's willing to come every month? And like we meet at church, so hold the key, unlock the doors, make sure the doors are locked at the end. If we're showing somebody's doing a presentation, bring the projector, bring the screen and the stuff that you need. So I think that in some ways, having somebody run a club is almost more work than just running the once a year con, because they're responsible. And even if they're sick, they got to figure out, how do I get the building open every single solitary month?
A question.
A lot of these talks assume there's already a core club in place. How do you start a group? What do you do in places where the club format is not the local norm? We started a book group, but it's the way the book group started is there was about 4 people who were interested, and then we put out the word and talked up at bookstores and stuff. But for a science fiction club, I'm not sure how you do that anymore.
Meetup.com.
Yeah, meetup.com would be a perfect thing for that.
Earlier might work.
The only other convention in Cleveland right now is a one-day shot LGBTQ plus free convention. And honestly, there is a little bit of crossover between them and Concoction. And when they first started up, this is fabulous. I would be happy. Please come work with us, learn how you do this, and tell us come give us a new insight. And they pretty much said, yeah, nah, we got this, and have done some absolutely brilliant work. But part of the reason that they have done so well, I think, is because they pretty much all meet up at the same gamer bar on the west side of town. and they don't really have meetings. They talk over drinks and they talk over games.
Right. But that's a beginning.
But it's a beginning.
Yeah.
And because they are all people that hang out at the same bar, that's how they got started, and that's how they continue.
Right. That's what she was going to say. She said the meetup group, and that's an excellent idea. And find like a local pizza place or something like that that doesn't care if you take up a whole table. People know it, and you may eventually like, we're too big to meet up here at the pizza place anymore. Let's find out what community centers or library rooms or whatever are
Most
available.
Paneras have a side room that is free to reserve.
Right.
We have every other meeting in one.
Yeah.
One of the other conventions in our area does meet up in the Panera, so it is a good location.
Did we answer your question, or did you come back to the mic so that
Okay.
online, especially if you're going to address Marguerite?
If it's a situation where you've got a club and then you decide to put on an event and you've got people in that event and they keep doing the same jobs year after year after year, it has to be in your bylaws that they have an apprentice. They have somebody they can turn it over to or that can work with them, so that no one is indispensable.
Yeah.
You know, that they can take over in a moment. And this is kind of forward planning, you know, because and it's fandom. You know, a lot of times the attitude in fandom is they want to carpet the world, or they want the world carpeted for them instead of just putting on a pair of slippers.
Yeah.
You know, that's.
Yeah, we have our board really tries to stay out of the day-to-day business of running a convention, but we've kind of established through the con chairs that we want every department to have a second in command, an apprentice, to be able to eventually take over if the people at the top of that department are like, I'm ready to retire, or we're moving, or I've got cancer, or whatever.
Yeah, and we actually ran into that problem. Our longtime masquerade director died suddenly, and we lost all his institutional knowledge, and we had to so that's what happens when you don't have seconds.
In a healthy convention, you do have people turning over on a regular basis. You can tell a convention is starting to have problems when you do have the same people in charge of the same thing year after year. I also want to mention, in terms of bringing people in, people come to, I'm talking about NESFA, New England Science Fiction Association, which has been around for a long period of time with a very relatively static membership. The reason it's static is because people walk into a meeting at the clubhouse and are getting into listening to people have tirades about politics or about embarrassing medical procedures. And that's, we'll do a pretty good job about chasing people away. The people who run the convention, there may be about 5 or 6 people who work their butts off to do most of the planning. And we're talking about a 1,400 person convention, with other people occasionally joining in or saying, I will only do this at the convention. And even if it's something the convention doesn't want to do, if I don't do this, I won't do anything. How do you deal with that? You can be encouraging, you can try to get things to work. How do you fix these symptoms of a dying club and convention?
Honestly, if you've got somebody who says, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do anything, and you don't want them doing that, then they're not going to be doing anything. Thank you very much for your time and your help. Have a good day.
So BISFIS is not quite as old as NESFA is, but we're similar ages. We actually have been solving that problem. So the people who have known each other forever and are discussing their medical problems, we're kind of encouraging them to be in their own corner where they can keep up with each other. And then those of us actively engage them.
Right.
Plus, if they come to our business meetings, we ask them to stand up and introduce themselves. So we're engaging the younger people who are coming in like right away. And even though we're not giving them anything to do yet, we're making them feel welcome and giving them an opportunity to not interact about medical problems and such.
Right.
So, yeah.
At the very least, encourage them to save it for the end.
Yeah.
Save it till after the meeting. Get the meeting done quickly so that people can chat and talk about whatever they want.
Well, and that's it. Like we, let's see, this is now December. So what was November? We had a speaker in November, and often if we're doing that, you're going to have the very like, here's the club announcements. Anybody who owes dues, let's get that done. Now let's turn it over to our speaker for tonight. And then, yeah, all that socializing and people that want to say, how are you doing? Because there are people who are sick and you're concerned about them as human beings that you see once a month. And so we try and like, okay, we're socializing. We don't need to start cleaning up for another hour or so. People can leave then, they can stay and talk to each other. But yeah, I would encourage at clubs to try, and if you're having any kind of a program, whether it's a book discussion that month, or whether you're showing a movie, or whether you're having a local author to come and talk, that you get that stuff first and have that end period for the socializing, and anybody that doesn't want to hear. And also, we meet at a church right now, so we really try to be on everybody tries to be on everybody about, like, we're in a church, let's keep this civil, let's keep the cursing to a minimum since we're in a church, because we just want to respect the environment that we're in.
I find that the big thing about this is like, okay, this is event planning as a hobby, right?
Right.
And being a member of a group like this, what people are looking for are friends,
Exactly.
camaraderie, the satisfaction of putting on an event together like this and it going well. I mean, after it's over and people are happy, they had a good time there. I mean, that feeling you get is kind of, it builds up your adrenaline. So let's do the next one, to start planning the next one. So the only thing I could say, it's like if people get off topic, so to speak, and there's somebody new in the room and it puts them off, I guess the only thing you could do is like have maybe an ambassador or something like that around to, welcome them and say, well, don't worry, it's not like this all the time. And
I think you can find that and clubs are a different beast. I mean, this is supposed to be about the kind of the club level. Clubs are a different beast from being on a con-com. And you really kind of need to keep those separate, because you're right, at a club, it's people are there to socialize, to possibly meet friends or people that they can hang out with or go to a movie with, exactly that. And that's why you want to keep that environment kind of a little bit less like we're just here to get this business done, period, and more kind of like, this is a social group. Yes, we have a speaker today, but we certainly want to encourage people to get to know each other. We all have books. Learn who's willing to help you move if you need to, in exchange for them helping you move. That kind of thing.
Since we have our own facility, we can do events throughout the month. And even if you're meeting in some other location, since you can have clubs from the business meetings and from other speaker things, it really helps that people can become involved without having to do all the slogging through the business part.
Right.
And since Concoction is coming at it from the other end, where we are not a club, we are not that kind of a group. We are a business, more of a business organization. And consequently, we then do outreach. We do group things that any of our volunteers are welcome to come. We have a bowling night. All the volunteers can come out and bowl with us. We have game nights. We have,
you are getting some social things in there too.
Right.
It's not just business.
Right. We are trying to create a community from the other direction. Yeah. Because community is important for these sorts of things.
Right. And one of the things you talked about was that when you start your con, everybody was friends. And the other thing that happens is as cons get bigger, it starts getting hard sometimes to separate friendships from we're running a con, and that can cause some problems. That's again where hopefully if you've got different various small clubs in your town, you're drawing talent from each of them, because cons, it's hard. You're an unpaid business. You are basically running a business, but nobody's paid. Egos get hurt sometimes. people that were your friends, you discover like, okay, I love you as a friend, but you are not a good con worker, and that's just going to happen. And that's partially also keeping that club thing separate so that you have a social group that can be separate from your con.
And also not requiring membership in the club to even be a department head means that you're not making one friend group at each other's throats, the entire year.
Right.
Yeah, because you could, if a con was to fall apart, it could.
Yeah, I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
El Paso, that happened.
A lot of conventions don't realize, well, a lot of convention volunteers don't realize that what they do in their volunteer work actually has real world
Oh yeah.
consequences. In 2008 and 2009, when so many people were unemployed, they were starting to and it was perfectly fine. In fact, that was the new trend, was to list your volunteer work. And the only thing is now, if you left a company and you put it on your resume that you worked for that company, the people you're trying to get to work with, when they go to check, when they do a background check, I'm saying this from the state of California. In the state of California, the HR can be called, and the only two things they can say is when they started work and when they finished work, nothing else. But if you put on there that you were a volunteer for such and such con, and this is the contact information, unless you've talked to that person beforehand or you have a good relationship, they can say anything.
Yeah.
And that may not be good for you. So the thing is, it's great to make these little fantasy bubbles where we can all enjoy our fan, our fan geek stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to have, that bubble needs to be protected by people who know about business and know how to, to protect the fans and the and the people.
That really is a whole nother panel about
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, how to put your hobby volunteer work on a resume, because it's entire. I mean, I
just wouldn't put them as contacts.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
I would, list it, yes, but if it's relevant to the job you're going for, list it. But I just wouldn't put a contact.
And there's certainly that as well. But yeah, that's also, you never put on a contact without talking to the contact first. That's resume 101 politeness.
And as far as, just as a side note, just as what she's saying about California, that's pretty much true, I think, in most states. New Mexico, you're allowed to say, yes, they were employed here. Yes, they are eligible for rehire, which means they gave a 2-week notice. That's all the HR can answer. But your manager that you work for can be a personal / business reference. But like we were saying, that not like whole different thing mostly.
Yeah, that's a big conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think when Marguerite was asking about too, it's like, yeah, you're always going to have one person who's willing to attempt to start a group. That's the seed. And Marguerite, if you're willing, then unfortunately, especially at the beginning, you're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to try and post a meetup group or put something on Facebook or something, or talk to your local bookstore and maybe see if they've got 4 other people that have been talking about starting a book group, and see if you can get a connection with that. But at the beginning, you're going to have to do that work. And as far as dying clubs, I hate to say it, but clubs die all the time. There was a Star Trek group here in Albuquerque that their first year was drawing like about 300 people at the first couple meetings, which was just insane. And then of course, politics split that down to about 75. And they slowly over time just kind of have gone away. But and that's going to happen as fan groups are going to die. And when they're dying, I think that there's a certain point where I know some of us who were involved towards the end started going like, and I'm done.
So with clubs, how do you deal with the occasional bad actor where in a situation where we've had to basically tell someone that they're no longer welcome ever again?
A good, strong code of conduct and people willing to enforce it.
Yep. I mean, we've had an occasional problem, mostly for there was some dark politics at one point. There was an attempt when the club was still directly electing the chair. One of Kevin's first meeting was there was an attempt to have a coup because at the time we had it that you only had to pay dues that month to vote. And so then we had some really ugly, nasty, long meetings about voting rights. And so when we incorporated, yes, when we incorporated, we changed that where the chair comes within the committee, but if there's two people on the committee who want to run and the rest of the Concom said, yeah, they're both competent, then we go to the club for an election. But we have rules like you have to have attended at least 3 meetings in the last year and your dues have to be up to date for voting. But
the first incarnation of BISFIS died in something like that. People came in, paid their dues on their first meeting, voted for their friends, who then gaffeated. So there was this hiatus. And then and the con kept going on. When the club reformed, there's now a rule that you can only join after you've been to 2 business meetings, which are our toughest meetings to get through.
Right.
So we won't even talk to you until you've proven that you want to be there.
I mean, we talked about confrontation. Several of the panels have touched on confrontation this weekend about like when you have to fire somebody on your Concom and stuff. And it's the same thing at the club level. It's never fun. And who in your club is willing to say, you're causing a problem. We would really like you to not come back. It's a very difficult thing.
I think we've got a question on the board. Can anybody read that? It's a little far from a comment.
Yeah.
Kim, can you read that? Okay.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm in a book
Who's
group.
not going blind?
Thanks. I'm in a book group, and there are meetings and things already, but they seem to be very siloed groups. There are clubs and there are conventions, and rarely the twain shall meet. I have a wider question. WorldCons can be real-time, fan sync. What can WorldCons do to encourage local clubs as well as being able to fulfill their own recruitment needs? What would you like the larger organizations to do to help local events?
I can't speak to WorldCon. Anyone?
Ask your local group if they want to have an hour.
Wawa, which is putting on Discon, is actually drawing. Well, we have a lot of local clubs, so that makes it different from a lot of places. But Wawa does draw from BISFIS and WISFA and several of the other local clubs. But I'm not sure that applies to other regions.
Can I say just a quick thing?
Yes.
There's always fan tables. They can arrange meetups in the programming. Conventions can be reciprocal.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because like at BuboniCon, which is a smaller con, admittedly, we still try to talk to the local fan groups and say, do you want an hour to talk about what your group's doing or do some kind of presentation? Or we have a Browncoats group and there's a Star Trek group, and one year they had a debate called "My Captain is Better Than Your Captain," which was Kirk versus Reynolds, and talk your
Who won?
I don't remember, because of course it's more for the show than anything else. It's a definite like we're putting on a play. But I think even at the WorldCon level, it's the same thing. If you're running a WorldCon, I think you can still talk to your local clubs about, do they want a fan table? Do you have an hour that you can offer them so they could talk about their group in one of the facility rooms? Beyond that, I don't know.
Okay, I have 2 comments now.
Okay.
One was going back to the dying, failing clubs. Clubs have certain life cycles as well, and if there's a small group that doesn't want the club to die, they can keep on meeting. It'll be more social than business, but they can build it up again. Marcon is 55 years old, and we've had high years, we've had low years, we've had high years. It's a roller coaster, and there just is a cycle to it. The people who have been there for a while are like, I need to step back for a minute, and then they don't like the young kids who came in and said, hey, we'll do it. And I'm like, oh, no, you cannot have it both ways. But welcome them in and find out how it can grow. It built different program tracks. It built different interests, and it reinvigorated the convention, and that worked well. The other one was with local groups. The fan tables are awesome. You can also host, throw an open meeting that you don't have to be a member of the board, of the con, of the group, of the club. Just, it's open. It's for everybody to come and talk. You can do a picnic. In the summertime, we do come play with us because we're not running a convention. We can actually sit and talk with you, and we can brainstorm, and we can throw ideas out there. And if you throw everything against the wall, something might stick, because it doesn't matter when it's a year before the convention and you're decompressing from the last one. We build in nothing serious from post-con meeting after the convention until about August. And we get that time, we can all decompress in that time, and it gives us a minute to step away and then come back and at the picnic and start meeting with people and brainstorming and fresh ideas. So thank you.
Speaking of open meetings, one of the things that we do is that all con meetings are open. And
yes.
And if you were to talk to, if you were to ask us who's on the con committee, we can't actually answer that, because sometimes it's a committee of the whole, sometimes it's the department heads. So
do you have like a list of department heads so people know who to contact if they want to volunteer, like a volunteer path?
So a lot of the department heads are actually at the meetings, and others kind of send proxies. We have a strange issue in which even the chair doesn't know exactly what departments we have. It's actually an effort.
That's a little more than a little strange.
When a con has gone on 53 years, some things become tradition.
MarCon is 55. I understand that.
Yeah.
But every time I've been chair, I've kind of known who is working with me.
But one of the things that we know who's working for us. We just don't always know how they divide.
Well, is that because of the voting you in 2 years in advance, and maybe your con for your specific year hasn't quite collated yet?
I mean, part of it is that we can't actually, sometimes our CONCOM is a committee of the whole where everybody gets a say, the chair gets final say.
We've got about 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, we got about 10.
Yeah, I can talk to you offline about that.
Okay, yes, okay, thank you. Because
I think of one other thing that
that's
small cons and regional cons. Another thing that is possible is talk to your convention about sponsoring the con suite for a couple hours, because a lot of con suite sponsorships. I don't know at the WorldCon level if that's possible, but another thing that you could do at WorldCon is throw a room party. If and if you have to get like 6 people to chip in on the rent for one night and throw a club party. Yep.
So Esther said, thank you. That's really useful.
Thank you for reading that.
Just to back up a bit, we were talking about how do you keep things from dying, and what do you do about the proverbial hit by a bus? Document, document, document.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you are the head of a department, write down everything. If Eric were still here, he'd be laughing at me because I don't. But if you don't have a second whom you are working with closely, and even if you do, make sure everything gets written down and passed along, put in a common drive, someplace where everyone can get to it. So that if you suddenly disappear tomorrow, somebody can step in and read what you've been doing.
Yeah, that's what we started. Is we have a Gmail account, which of course has a drive. We put all of our documents on it. We also did it so that when we had co-chairs, the theory always was like if one person died, at least the other person could still get into the email and still get into drive and get all the documents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we try to do a lot of that.
We took the standard phrase "being hit by the beer truck" and changed it to a little bit more science fictional: "being hit by the meteor bus."
Yeah, we are all getting old. These things do happen. Sometimes that meteor bus is a heart attack. But as long as we are going to be continuing to age, document, document, document. And I also recommend that you hit if you have any colleges near you, hit the colleges. They have groups, they have fans, they have all. And you can pitch it to the college kids about resume fodder. Working with the convention is definitely resume fodder.
And for high schools that have volunteer requirements.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not true every place, but there are some high schools that actually have science fiction clubs, or they have a Dungeons and Dragon club. That was when I was in high school in the 70s. That was one of the things we did, was we had a D&D group.
Yeah. Surprisingly, a lot of sororities and fraternities have volunteer hours. If you're a 501c3, it counts, it qualifies. If you need burly boys to help you with a load-in, and you've got a nearby college, go check out Frat Row.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that, so that's a good idea.
And comp memberships.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've got about 6 minutes. So any other club related discussion, how we can keep clubs going, or how clubs are important, or any of that? Oh, here we go.
Okay.
She's got another idea.
We like ideas.
Marcon is in Columbus, Concoction is in Cleveland, and one of the first places they had a hall table was at Marcon. I was like, another convention, more fans. And I threw Marcon staff at them and said, use them your first year, use them to help people get excited about it. So also helping each other is a really good way to keep the community going. And now they come down, and one of the Concoction staff is going to help me with our author alley, and I'm still sending people in their direction. Just, it's helpful and it works and it's reciprocal. So, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, one more.
We got a few minutes.
I'm just kind of segueing onto what she said. I've had this meetup. I've been taking care of this meetup group for like over 10 years now. Yeah, I guess it's 11 years now. And I know one of my things is I have like 4 or 5 different other people helping me organize it. And occasionally you'll find the control freaks.
Mm-hmm.
They want to do everything themselves. And I think that's what kind of shoots things down sometimes. It's like, because nobody could do anything better than her. She does it best. And anyway, occasionally, that's not a good attitude, keeping everything close to their vest. It's like Kim says, you want to share resources. And I think that's what's helped my meetup group survive. It has over 1,800 people right now.
Wow.
So, and it's kind of related to science fiction.
Yeah, and you were talking about, like you say, sometimes you're there. I think that you can want control, but you have to still like listen to people, and maybe you have to go mull it over in your head for a week or a week and a half, but be open to at least the ideas, and at least hear them initially. You may come up in your own head with like, okay, but that causes A, B, and C problems, but at least listen to that initial idea.
Within the Boston area where I'm from, one of our fan groups right now is in serious trouble based on legal issues, and they're also in the process of chewing off their own feet with a code of conduct, harassment issues on top of it. The thing that might save our group would be if that group falls apart, to be able to welcome in more talented people. Problematical historical reasons, this might not happen. So it'd be really interesting to be able to suck people in and still maintain the type of convention culture that we have as opposed to the previous one. But it's kind of interesting to see this thing play out, see what's going to happen.
In your specific case, because I know a lot of the background, the people who are disaffected, with that other con might be the people to start with. The ones who actually, you know what I mean.
I've been lucky that we haven't ever gotten to a legal stance, and again, it's like keeping that club separated from the con to a degree. But I don't know what you do in it. Well, luckily in our case, it'd be like, well, here you can have the whole zippered bag of money. We're done.
Well, I was going to say, sorry, my name is Jessica. I'm also involved with BubanaCon. We had an issue with BubanaCon and one of the local clubs that was not really an issue between BubanaCon and the local club. It was other people in fandom who had taken one incident that happened 10 years ago and we're still bringing it up as if it was a problem. Exactly. So we literally had a meeting with the directors from both clubs where we also are, okay, what can we do to convince people that we really have no problem with each other, and we work together. They run an amazing party at our convention every year. We get along fine. It's, you know, other people building up that issue. So sometimes you just need to have a conversation. Just sit down with people and go, okay. It did actually quite a bit. Because we all just looked at each other and we're like, do you have a problem with me? No, I have no problem with you. We get along fine. Okay, what can we do now to convince other people? So we made a show of going to their party that year, even though, you know, we both have to be up at 9 a.m. to run the convention. And so, you know, it's just sometimes it took a couple of years of us showing up at the party, hanging out for a little bit, having a drink, and talking, you know, for an hour with the people who run that group. And thankfully it has died down now.
The principal has entered the room. We have about 30 seconds to a minute. So basically, I guess, final thoughts. Yeah, stop. Well, we're done. Well, anyway,
Thanks, everybody.
Support your local club. Go to a meeting this month.
Yes.